Hi, my name's Steve Bambury. I'm a very proud certified Faraday Advisory Board chair. No, so my background, I guess I've been an entrepreneur all my life. I started my first business way back in the 70s where I had a lawn mowing round and started my first real business in 1993. So over 33 years in business now, and I've got some worldly experience in that space. I've 10x'd and exited businesses for multi-million dollars. And I've also been through the process of having lost a lot and got some real experience from that and some life lessons and some business lessons that comes from that. So for me, 33 years of commercial experience, some hard-fought success and some hard-fought failures as well. And I guess that gives me, I guess, a perspective on governance and the ability to share knowledge and experience, which is relatively unique in some cases, having lost it all, jumped back on the horse, and then went and started my next venture and grew that by almost 1,000% over the GFC. So being prepared to, I guess, courageously face what's happened, learn the lessons from it, and then stand back up again. There's a lovely saying: get knocked down 7 times, stand up 8. And I think that experience, that worldly, real world experience, is something that's given me a unique perspective on business, on governance, and the ability to share that is something that just feels like right now everything's come together to the space. It feels like the work I was born to do. And today we're going to talk about that experience ceiling, or breaking the experience ceiling.
Hi, welcome to Governance Bites. My name is Mark Banicevich, and today, as you just heard, I get the pleasure of spending more time with Steve Bambury. Steve, thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure to
This
be here.
this concept that you've talked about, breaking the experience ceiling, can you start by explaining what you mean by this, by what an experience ceiling is, and how do you know when the company has hit it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mark. And I think that the level of, I guess, problem solving is determined by the level of experience and problem solving capability within an organization. So when they hit a ceiling, when their current experience, when their current knowledge and experience combined aren't able to help us break through that barrier, that ceiling that we hit at various times, organization grows. That's when we need to look outside of our own capabilities, our own organization's capabilities, and go, well, what do we need to get through this? As opposed to just working harder and doubling down on what we're doing and trying to tough it up and get through it ourselves.
Right. One of the things with the concept of advisory boards is this concept of renting experience. What does that look like in governance terms?
Look, a great question. I think once we understand where we're going and the direction that we're taking, and then looking at what experience do we have internally. So we say, well, this is where we are as an organization. This is what we have at a leadership level, as a business level, as a founder's level in terms of experience and capability. This is where we're going. This is the experience and the capability that we need to have. What's that gap? And then looking at that gap and then bringing in the experience that can help us to fill that gap and serve us to the direction that we're going. Now, in some cases, we can, in the terms of renting that experience, we can bring an advisor in that's got relative experience to what the business needs right now on the basis that it doesn't have it internally. And we can bring that experience in for a specific project or a piece of work or a given period of time. And then that advisor can step down. We've got the agility to do that with an advisory board where they step down for the duration of period that the business needs it, and then it's gone. In other cases, we may need to transfer that experience internally within the company because it's something that they're going to be doing multiple times and they're going to need that experience long term. In that case, we rent the experience that we need to so that we've got time to pass it on internally, and then that advisor's created their own redundancy within that role and they step aside and the business is bigger, better, and stronger as a result of it.
Right. How does that rented experience on an advisory board differ from just engaging consultants or hiring advisors?
I think the Faraday model says we do it with you, not to you. And look, I've in my business career, I've had coaches, I've had advisors come and go all during that period of time. Quite often, what I've experienced Um, and no disrespect at all to coaches. They fill a beautiful role in the business community. But what I've experienced and what I see a lot of is business owners that are already maxed out, leadership teams that already have a to-do list that's not getting any shorter. It's getting longer. We've got more complexity, we've got more volatility, we've got more uncertainty in the world right now. And that tends to bring more things into a leadership team's capability. And I've lost my train of thought now. Uh, so
We're talking about the
yeah,
difference between hiring consultants or engaging
yes,
advisors.
yeah, okay. So to answer that, then where a consultant will quite often come in and tell you what you need to do and then leave you with it.
Yes,
Whereas we're doing it with you and not to you. So
right.
we will identify the right things to do, but then we'll roll our sleeves up, get stuck in, and then help work through those together as an advisory board, as
Yeah.
opposed to just giving the leader, the owner, the senior leadership team more things to do themselves when they're already maxed out, because that's not going to help with their
No.
stress levels.
Well, something else you've implied there as well is when you're hiring consultants or engaging an advisor for one area, it's very piecemeal. Whereas with an advisory board, you're coordinating all this stuff together, right? And that's part of taking them on that journey. And it's not just getting somebody in and saying, here's the answer to this question. Thanks very much. Here's your bill. See you later.
Yeah,
It's working through on that journey, but also talking together about how that interacts with other parts of the business and how it all fits together.
absolutely. And that comes back to having an amazing strategy, and a long-term strategy, a mid-term strategy, and a short-term strategy, the
Yes,
three horizons, so that you know what you need when you need it. You can rent it or you can own it on the
yes.
way through. So it's not just a case of coming and saying, well, you should do that. Put that on your list and you go and do it.
How do these subject matter mentors actually change the speed and quality of decision making? How does that advisory boards change how quickly you can make high quality decisions?
I guess it comes back to the experience that you've got, the experience, the knowledge, the skills that you've got, that you've brought into the advisory board to help make those decisions. When you've got knowledge and experience and can share that relative to the business itself, because you need to understand the business,
Yes.
deeply understand the business, and that's the first part of the engagement of any advisory board, is that deep dive to really understand the business. And the part of the role of a chair is, as you're bringing in advisors, that you're sharing that, you're transferring that knowledge to the advisors, so that the advice that they're giving is absolutely relevant and specific to that organization.
Hmm.
So when it becomes the case, then you can make decisions quickly, because you're coming from two places. You're coming from knowledge and experience of the business itself, and knowledge and experience of your worldview, your own experience relative to that challenge that you're looking to face. Then you can share that knowledge, you can make better decisions. And you see light bulb moments in rooms where people go, wow, okay, I've never thought of it like that before. I didn't know that. That's the blind spots that we spoke about sometime earlier, Mark. You illuminate those blind spots, you challenge those felt beliefs and assumptions, and you can make better decisions through the advisory board and through data.
Yes.
You can validate decisions through data. I've seen it so many times in my career, where you're making a decision which is based on an assumption, but then when you go and validate it with the data is telling you something completely different. The numbers are actually talking to you in a way that you hadn't really thought of before.
Yeah. Yeah. One other question about the advisory boards and the subject matter advisors that are on the advisory boards. The company's still going to have its formal board because you've got every company's got directors, formal directors,
Yeah.
and you've got your management team. Where does this advisory board sit in relation to that formal governance and the management team, and how do you avoid role confusion?
They're very different. They're very different roles, and it's a great point to make, is that your governance board is responsible, is typically looking backwards. It's looking at fiduciary responsibilities. It's looking at the legal requirements of that governance board. It's making sure that we're compliant and we're not putting the company at risk. Whereas your advisory board is forward thinking. It's going, okay, what about this? What if we did that? You're looking at growth and performance moving forward, as opposed to, I guess, more backward looking from a governance perspective. Now, sometimes there are going to be things that we need to understand from a governance board that will help make the advice that we're giving from an advisory board's perspective more valid and more relative to what we're looking to achieve in terms of our growth objectives. But we need between the two of them.
Right. Uh, How do you identify the right people to rent the experience from? Especially when, some of these companies are in very high stakes positions, right? This can be make or break scenarios. So how do you identify the right people?
Well, it comes back down to, the initial piece of work, deeply understanding where the organization is now, what are its ambitions, where is it looking to go, and then what do we need at certain points on that journey.
Hmm.
Again, I come back to those three horizons. I love the concept of that. Here's where we're going, the big lofty, big hairy audacious goal, if you like.
Yes. Yeah, the
Here's,
BHAG.
here's Horizon 2 that's taking us in that direction, and here's Horizon 1. That's your
Mm.
short-term goals. Now, you might be heading towards a big goal down here to make an acquisition, let's say. Well, okay, so that's where we're going. But in order to do that, we've got to identify what type of companies fit for a perfect acquisition. That might be Horizon 2. And then we've got to look at how we manage our financials, because we may need to look at raising some capital. In order to raise capital, we may have to make some adjustments in terms of what we're doing within the organization from its financial perspective that allows us to do that. That might be Horizon 1. Then in Horizon 2, we're identifying the companies that we might be looking at. And then on Horizon 3, we make that acquisition. So you bring in the experience relative to what the organization needs in service of the direction that it's going. And that allows us to make good decisions on the way through at the right time, and not make, I guess, knee-jerk decisions on the way through that don't need to be made until the right time.
Right. Yes. There will be occasions, or there may be occasions, where that rented expert disagrees with the decision makers. How do you handle that kind of dissent?
And look, I think it comes back down to giving advice. I think it comes back down to making careful selection of the right organizations. Is that organization ready for an advisory board? If they're not prepared to accept that there are things that they don't know, if they're not prepared to accept external advice and experience and knowledge, then they're probably not right for an advisory board, because they're going to keep making their own decisions. They're going to keep thinking that they've got all the answers, or they think they need to know all the answers. Well, an advisory board is not going to be appropriate for them. But you
Mhm.
will get to a point at sometimes with an advisory board where you'll give your advice, and that advice is not listened to, and that's okay. Our role there is to be professional advisors, to share our knowledge, wisdom, and experience, but ultimately the decisions rest with the owner of that business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. One of the other things that you've talked about before is this concept that you might have an advisor that you bring in that whose part of their role is to share their knowledge and to build the capability within the business. Um, is there a risk that organizations become dependent on the rented experience of these advisors rather than building their own capability?
Yeah, there's a danger in that if you don't call it out. I think you've got to be able to differentiate between what knowledge and experience the business needs to retain within it, and what knowledge and experience to rent. Because otherwise, you can end up with an organization that creates a dependency on the advisor. And that may be fabulous for the advisor's paycheck, but it's not the best thing for the business.
Yes.
So as a chair, the role is to go, no, this is a project. It's a short-term project. It might be 3 months, 6 months. It might. Once we've achieved that, you set your goals, you set your metrics, so you can determine what does success look like relative to that particular goal.
Yes.
Get there. And then when we get there, it's just a natural attrition for that advisor to step away, job done. Alternatively, if that internally, then there may be a recruitment plan that needs to be put in place. So you recruit that expertise and skill someone within the organization. So
Right.
there are a number of ways of doing that, but you've got to be able to call it out so that you don't create a dependency on
Yes.
external
So to
advice.
summarize the key points that you made there'll be some strategic project type work that is very very unitary. And once it's complete, the business doesn't need the ongoing expertise. And there'll be other things where the expertise, the capability is just a requirement of an ongoing requirement of the business. And in that case, you need to make sure that that capability gets transferred into the business in somehow, whether it's through training or through recruitment.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
What indicators suggest that the experience ceiling that we've talked about is lifting?
I guess when you're achieving worthwhile and meaningful goals. You set your goals, and whether they might be financial. We talk about economic mobility within Faraday. If you're looking for economic mobility, then there's some simple metrics around that in terms of your growth. And those are your financial numbers in that respect. But in other areas, it's going to be you've set a goal, you've set the success metrics, you're measuring those, and you're achieving them.
Okay.
And now we've achieved them, that advisor can step aside. So that is success in service to the direction that the business is going.
Great. Now, taking it back to the start, if a founder or a board of directors recognizes they've hit the experience ceiling, what's the first thing they should do?
Well, if they're looking for external advice, they recognize that they've hit that experience ceiling, then talk to someone that can come in and identify what they need to do to move through it. Talk to someone that's got that experience with it. I mean, my own organizations, we've had experience ceilings. I've worked with many organizations that have had experience ceilings and been able to step in and provide a perspective on it that they just haven't thought of before because they just don't have that experience, and that's okay. So I think the very first thing is to once you accept that you are hitting it, and you don't have to do it alone, and you don't have to carry all that weight on your shoulders, then reach out and ask for help.
Yeah, ideal. What are the most common mistakes boards make when they're renting experience?
I think it goes back to the point that you were making earlier. If you're not careful, then you can create a dependency
Right.
on those advisors that come in. So I think it's important to have your metrics and know when the job is done so they can step off.
And
So
recognize
not,
whether it's a project role, whether it's dependency isn't going to be required on an ongoing basis, or whether it's something that is going to be an ongoing capability requirement.
yeah, and I guess there's a blend between the two.
Yeah.
There may be occasion where you need to bring in that expert advice to come in to do a project that might be 3 months, and that project is done. Then they step off, and they might come back in 18 months' time.
Yes.
And it might be more cost effective to bring it in,
As
on a 12
required.
monthly basis or as required to be able to take that business forward.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Steve. We've got one final question for you again, a general question. What advice would you give to a new director?
A new director, we're talking about a governance board director, or we're talking about an advisory board?
Either, actually. Take your
Um,
pick.
I guess having the courage to say you don't know. Look, I know I've learned plenty along the way, but I'm also I'm also prepared to say, look, I don't know the answer to that. So I think not having to, because someone might be paying for your experience and expertise, there will be time to time where you don't know the answer to that. I think it's important to accept that there are things that we don't know. Put your hand up and say, look, I don't know the answer to that. But I can find out. That's one of the great things with Faraday. We've got a number of certified chairs with huge amount of experience behind them. We've got, I think, over 200 advisors now. So we
Right.
can look at a situation, we can bring that advice in. I don't know the answer to that, but I just happen to know a guy or a lady that knows the answer to that.
Yeah.
Let me make a call and see whether that's going to be relevant for what we're talking about here. And then you can bring that person in.
Steve, that's been a great conversation. Thank you so much for your time. I'll look
My
forward to
pleasure.
doing it again, and we'll see you next episode. Thank you for watching this episode of Governance Bites. We have more episodes on YouTube and your favorite podcast channel, where I interview directors and experts on various topics relating to boards of directors and governance. We'd love to see you back, and please like, subscribe, and share the videos and podcasts.